Okay, the minutes of January 15th. We need a motion to approve.
I have not looked at them, and yeah, I'll just wait for any discussion.
Yeah, you want
I
to,
there,
Michelle, just do a quick roll call vote, or just recognize
right. Yeah,
that Jessica's here and I'm here and Matt's here and Michelle's here and Tupper is and Greg is and Deb. Hey.
Yeah, I'll go roll call first, but I'm gonna have to be on mute a lot, so my apologies.
Okay.
Got a fan blowing in the back here, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll be listening. Thanks.
Okay, so Alan Genevieve's here, Greg's here. You want to keep going with the roll call?
can you call the names? I can't see them. I'm
Yeah,
on my,
absolutely. Jessica,
I left my laptop.
you're on mute, Jess. I'll come back to Jess.
Okay,
Matt?
yep, I'm here. Sorry, I'm
Okay.
here.
Matt,
Here.
Michelle,
Michelle's here. Michelle. Booth.
Tupper,
Here.
Deb Potay.
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum, we have 7, and we're ready to go. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 15th? I wasn't there, so
So moved.
anyone? Okay,
Yeah, I'll
So
second it.
okay. And is there discussion or amendments or anything to the minutes? No discussion? Okay. We're gonna, someone's.
Yeah,
needs to
I'll let him
put-
know he's not muted.
Right,
Greg, you need to mute your
is that
mic.
correct? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call vote.
Can we
We're
mute
gonna
him?
take a roll call vote to approve the minutes.
Alan Genevieve's, yes. Jessica,
Yes.
Matt
Yep.
and Michelle,
Yes,
Tupper,
Yes.
Deb Potay.
yes,
And Greg, I just sent a message to. Can you, so you're the host, Jay. Can you mute him? You can mute him. Thank you. Okay,
okay, discussion on section 9, or
Okay.
review section 9.
so Matt, you want to bring up your observation on
Can,
that?
Alan, I want to
Oh.
sort of interrupt here for a minute.
Oh, sure.
What I'd like to do is talk through the entire section and then we
Okay.
can open it up and people can go where they want to go.
Okay.
Okay?
I also hear a TV in the background somewhere.
Oh, that might be my radio. Hold on. Is that better?
Don't hear it. Thank you. Jay, you all set?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So, as with previous sections, this is taken from the heart template, okay? And then we've made some suggestions and I'll just try to walk through it with some explanation and then turn it back to Michelle. So, you have to have a section on how to amend the regional agreement. It's one of the requirements. Some of this language is quite typical, okay? And section A is about the fact that a town can initiate an amendment to the regional agreement. And so it describes how that happens, and it describes that an amendment cannot alter financial obligations, okay? The second, this A1 states that it can be initiated by 10% of the registered voters of a member town. Okay, that's not unusual. It may seem unusual, but it isn't. Amendments are not generally, okay, so let me just keep going. The next section
Jay,
is
can you
that,
mention it on one, also the school committee can do this as well.
yes, in this sentence here, by vote of a majority of all members of the committee. So a member town can initiate it and the school committee can initiate it. The school committee, though, does not have a role in approving it, okay? Any proposal printed to the secretary of the committee or ready to select board is notified that an amendment has been sent out. And then we've added language here that the amendment should go to the Department of Education for preliminary legal review. And that if the amendment is approved by DESE, then it can be sent to the respective select boards. If it is not preliminarily approved, it should go back to whoever initiated. It could be the member town or it could be the school committee. So you want that preliminary approval prior to asking all the towns to go to the trouble of a vote at their town meeting. You don't want that to happen and then have the department say no, okay? That it's not compliant. So then when a majority of the member towns by a majority vote, annual town meeting or special town meeting have approved the amendment and the commissioner has approved the amendment, it is adopted and that's where we are, okay? And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add before discussion. Okay, no. So Michelle, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, does anyone have any discussion on this? Do they want to bring up a point or are you ready to vote?
So I'd like to talk about this a little bit because this amendment process described in section 9 here becomes the basis for the beginning of the processes described in section 10 for admission of new towns and section 11 for withdrawal of a town. And, you know, the key factor here is that a proposal for amendment may be initiated by a petition, 10% of a town, or by a majority of all members of the committee. That 10% of the town thing, I think it makes sense because it protects a minority voice. It's still a huge effort actually to get 10% of registered voters in Montague. But it presents, I'm just like, I thought of this absolutely wild political situation where it's like somebody in Montague could try and convince 10% of the people in Leiden to initiate a petition to kick Northfield out. And like basically that kind of is all allowed under here. And it would be just this crazy political situation, but it's possible based on this. Now, the other language that's here that was noted is the submission to DESE and the need to have them ensure that it complies with all law and regulation, which may or may not have an influence in that instance. But I also don't think that should be in there. I think if the people of some town want to do something crazy and don't care what DESE says, if they can do that organizing, they should be able to. And whoever opposes that should be like, no, clearly the lawyers say this is wrong, and the DESE lawyers have said this is wrong, even though we didn't submit it to them. We asked an opinion, but I don't think it should be a requirement here in this thing. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about those situations because it allows for some very long tail and unlikely but wild political situations.
Jay, do you want to respond or do you want me to?
Well, if you're, it would, what the situation you're describing, is basically about the withdrawal of a town, right? And so it brings into play, section 11, if I have my numbers right. And the other thing is that if, I'm not sure I quite followed your point about DESE, but your scenario is a very good reason why the department should review it, okay? Because they're not going to approve of that kind of an amendment. And they would refer the district to go through the withdrawal process if they want to do that. So, you know, that's at least my first thought on that. Steve, do you have something else?
Yeah, just so you know, Matt, that the Massachusetts Constitution says that the Commonwealth government is responsible for the education of students, and therefore DESE has that responsibility to make sure they're being educated appropriately. It's in law and regulations that the DESE has to approve the amendments, have to approve the original agreement, begin with, and approve any amendments, because they got to make sure that children are educated in those communities. It's a safety valve and it's also law. So
That makes
there's
sense.
no getting around it. That has to be part of it. And you want to make sure that you're protecting, everybody's protecting, and a minority can't come and cause something that is really inappropriate.
I understand it's the law and you absolutely can't get around it. I figure eventually it would get caught. It's mostly about how you present what people can do. People do stupid stuff that they think is illegal all the time. Some of it is bad, and some of it they're trying to change the world in a good way. I don't know.
Well, if they want to change it, then they can go through the legislature and have laws changed. See if they can get the legislature to change the law. And I can tell you, because I've been involved in trying to get laws passed, it's a arduous process.
I don't know,
Yeah.
Michelle, if you can see, Jane's hand is up.
Oh, I can't, no.
Yeah, so that's the only one I see right now on the screen. If someone
Okay.
else is up, they should speak up, but Jane's hand is up.
Jane?
Well, I was going to say that I thought it was a requirement that DESE had to approve district agreements, that's the way it is. They're the boss. I don't always think they're a good boss, but that's another subject. Also, I would like to see the wording differently so that towns are not required to put the proposal on the next meeting. Because depending on the timing of when it's submitted to the town and what the town already has on that agenda, it might be better to allow the town to call another special meeting for this specific purpose or whatever. But you know, your annual town meeting has a deadline for getting in there, and it has to be far enough ahead for posting and far enough ahead for review by the town attorney, and allow time for changes if the attorney says you're doing something you shouldn't. So that, you know, I don't like the word that shall put it on. I'd like to see some leeway in there so that the town can do what's best for the whole process. If you already have a full agenda, suppose your agenda includes changing zoning laws that are very controversial. You wouldn't want two big subjects like this on the same meeting night. People
Jane,
would
is
walk
it
out of the
reasonable
meeting.
to
So
have,
anyway,
I'm sorry.
that's
Yeah.
why I'd like to see that say shall. I didn't have time to. I popped in here at the last minute,
Yeah.
so you probably already talked about all this stuff.
Jane, would you be amenable if it said something, the town shall within 90 days, schedule a meeting, something like that?
You mean as another clause in that sentence?
Well, yeah, well, in order to,
Let's
just
see, let me
shall,
find it.
do it.
The proposed amendment shall be sent back to the town requesting that the amendment, well, and I'm in the wrong place.
So the select board in each member town and shall include within the next 90 days or yeah, so it requires a little more wordsmithing.
Right.
Yeah,
So it could, we'll get to, I think,
or a special meet, or another town meeting called within 90 days.
yeah, I think
Just
the
another
concept
phrase
here,
in there.
the concept here, Jane, if I have this right, is that if it's in time for the annual, fine, but if it isn't, it should go to a special.
And I think it says that. I
Well-
think that it works the way it is. It says the next annual or a special town meeting called for the purpose. You have an either or.
You
So if
do.
you don't want to do it at the next annual, then call a special town meeting.
Oh,
That's what the
okay.
language says.
Mac, you had a question?
I was just gonna say to Jane, I think the word shall is not the problem, it's the next. The word next is probably what
Yeah.
the issue is, but I think that interpretation that we just heard, if it could be the next annual, or if it's or a special town meeting, the next time they have that, those would both not be coming up at the same time, probably. So,
Well, I think Tupper has a very good point here. that,
So if you add the word meeting after next annual, you'll have for the next annual meeting, and I would put a comma, or a special town meeting called for the purpose, comma, and then I think you've got it,
I think
all the
you might have-
flexibility you need.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, well, if they missed the deadline for this year's annual town meeting, let's say we propose this to the towns and we missed their deadline for printing in their annual town meeting, then the next annual town meeting would be next year.
So they
No,
have to
that's why
call a
it says
special.
special.
So they have to call
No, it doesn't say they have to. It says, or a special town meeting called for the purpose.
Well, you have
Doesn't
a
say
shall.
have to do it.
The shall is there. The shall call for the next annual meeting or for a special town meeting.
And that ought to
Uh,
say
for
annual
purpose.
town meeting
Yes, we can put that in.
and capitalized.
Why would it be capitalized?
The
Because-
pronoun, that's the proper noun.
If it's
Annual
associated with
town
a town,
meeting
it is.
is a thing that is the name of a thing that we all have.
It's capitalized if it's associated with a town. Okay. So it
Well-
says for the next annual town meeting or special town meeting called for the purpose.
Right, and take out the comma after meeting. Or a special town meeting called for the purpose.
Correct.
does it need to say the next
What?
or the next special town meeting?
No.
No, because then
No.
you,
Oh,
no, you don't
No,
do that.
because that's my point. You call a special
Yeah.
town meeting lots of times for zoning. I wouldn't
Right.
want to discuss a town district agreement and the zoning amendments in the same night. My brain wouldn't stretch that far.
No, I think you've got something pretty close here.
yeah.
Michelle?
Okay, is everyone okay with this wording? To take a vote?
I have one comment, if I may.
Okay,
This is a kind of a drafting pick, but it's applicable throughout these sections. And that is this use of the paren s close paren in some places and not in other places. I don't think we ever need to do that. I think that, first, I see it here in section A2, about halfway down. reference to with the proposed amendment closed with S on the end. We don't need to do that, and we do it sometimes, and we don't do it other times. It's inconsistent. And if you're talking about making the rules for an amendment, the same rule will apply for one amendment or two amendments or three amendments. You don't need to allow for possibly more than one. So I would recommend that throughout this drafting, we just abandon this business about having a reference to a plural or a possible plural. There's no implication that it can only happen once anywhere in here. And so I think it's unnecessary and confusing and creates inconsistencies.
Would you like to make that change?
Yes. I'd also like to see select board handled the same way every time.
Yeah, we'll
Sometimes
change.
it's
The
two
edits
words,
will-
sometimes it's one.
Yeah, we'll change. When we get to editing the final document, we'll take care of that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right. Roll call vote. Everyone's all right? Starting with,
Jane, yes. Just on this paragraph we're talking about, right?
talking
Well,
about the whole
section-
section.
The
section
section.
9. Yes. Alan, can you read off the names for me, please? Oh, I guess he's not there.
You're muted, Alan.
Alan, you're muted.
Can someone else?
All
I
right.
can't-
Yeah, no, so I was just asking Jay to take that off the screen so I can see people, and I was telling Tupper that you still have your hand up unless you had more. There we go. All right, so I'll start with, so this is voting to,
Section 9.
yeah, to accept this amendment to 9. Who made the motion?
There was
I
no
missed that.
motion.
There's no
Oh.
motion.
So
and
we're amending section
No.
9, aren't we? No,
You can vote it as amended.
Yes.
that's right. So I was looking for someone that's making that motion before I did a roll
Move.
call.
Can
Move
I
to
ask
vote as
another
amended.
question? Is
Yeah.
this the entirety of section 9? It's on the
Yes.
screen.
Yeah.
It is?
Yes.
Then it has a problem. It starts out with A, and then it does 1, 2, 3, and there isn't any B. That doesn't have to be changed tonight, but I just want to point it out.
Yeah, we can change the formatting. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if I was missing something here.
yeah. I'll make a note right now.
Just take the A out, and then that's a preamble, then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 3.
Right.
So I'm going to call for roll call vote, Michelle, but I'm sorry, I missed, who made the motion
I thought
to,
Jane did. Jane, did you make the motion?
I moved to approve as amended. Nobody seconded.
I'll
That's Dorinda.
second.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I was just looking for that tidy up. Let's see, Alan Genovese, yes. Matt,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Tupper,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
and Dorinda.
Yes.
I see Greg has left us for now. Okay, so that passes unanimously. We still have a quorum, so you want to go to the next one? Michelle, back
Yep.
to you.
Yep, section 10. Jay, you want to put that up?
Working on it.
Oh, there's my,
Okay, so just to walk through this one, another required section. You need to have language to define how you admit a new town. And has been previously mentioned in the discussion, an admission of a member town requires an amendment to the agreement, right? So that's why it starts off with in accordance with section 9. So this first paragraph is about how it needs to be approved by a majority vote, 2/3 of the member towns, in compliance with the provisions of law and approved by the commissioner. Okay. And the next section, it allows the district, or the committee rather, gives them the option of establishing an additional cost to the new member town to be included. And the cost will be defined in the amended regional agreement. The amended regional agreement, and this is pretty important, shall also address all the considerations regarding OPEB costs and pension liabilities and debt. Okay, so if a new town is coming in, when do they assume their share of those liabilities? Clearly articulated to the new towns and the voters prior to the vote. There is a timeline here. The town may be admitted to the district of July 1 of any fiscal year, provided that the approvals are in place and obtained no later than the preceding December 31st. And that's so that the Department of Education can adjust its Chapter 70 aid and record keeping and so forth and so on. The amended agreement will define the appropriate, oh yeah, so the other thing is you let in a new town, so you've got the other part of the amendment has to address the number of committee members and how that changes, okay? And the appropriate, okay, from the new towns to the permanent committee. I crossed out the vacancies because bringing new members into an existing, it is not a vacancy. So it's just within the process outlined in section 2. And I also have a little bit of a question about the transition committee, because you may or may not need a transition period for a new town to come in. But if you do, then you need that reference. And then finally, any debt that the new town carries prior to membership will remain the sole responsibility of that town. So the district doesn't assume any costs that it shouldn't assume. And that if that new member town is paying off something, you know, a new roof on something or whatever, then that's their cost. That doesn't translate into the new district. So those are some of the edits that we came up with, and I can turn this over to Michelle.
Okay, does anyone have any comments or points to make?
I need to refresh my memory. What did we decide about representation on the district committee?
The district committee is, if I have this right, it's district-wide voting with residency requirements. So the number of representatives by town is stated in the agreement, and that would have to be revised if a new town comes in.
Well, that's my point. Are we saying that voting that way, this document can set how many members there are from each town? So
Right.
Are we saying 3 members from each town?
No, we're not. We're not saying anything about it. We're just saying that the amendment has to include
Not here. When we set the type of membership for the committee, that's what we said?
Yes, I mean, I'd have to go back to it, Jane, but it's residency, district-wide voting with residency requirements, and it spells out how many from each town.
Well, I
Right,
think
so
she's got a good
this-
point.
This new member that would then have the same number as everybody else.
No, they would
No,
have whatever the amendment calls for.
Not everyone has the same number. It's proportional
Yes,
to the number of people in the town in order to meet Supreme Court requirements for one person, one vote type of stuff. If I remember, I can't remember if we chose 13 or 15.
I think it's 13, Matt.
I think it's 13 with the highest number of seats being held by Montague at 6. And then the next highest number by any other individual town at 3. And then it goes down from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't the point here that you can't just add new members? You have to rejigger the whole formula.
Exactly. So it's not like you would add one extra person. We would say that then. You have to rejigger the whole thing, like you said, Tupper.
Well, this paragraph doesn't do that. This paragraph simply says the appropriate number of committee members from the new town.
Well, the reason they're being is that our section 2 chooses a method wherein we have set a method for getting the number of members that we have. If you have 13 people and you're dividing it by population in a particular way, you get the composition that we have now. If you add another town and that certain number of people, you're going to go through the same method and get the appropriate numbers based on the process outlined in section 2.
Exactly.
I don't
But this
remember
doesn't say
reading
that.
that.
Section
I
2
don't
does not say that.
Can we kind of do one at a time here?
Jane, are you talking?
Well, I just don't remember voting on that. I gotta go back and find section 2. Is that what it is?
Yeah, we debated that for a long, long time over 3 or 4 meetings and then came up with that. I think there's 2 separate issues. There's the issue of how many member towns that are going to vote on this. And then if it passes, then this document is simply saying that you're now going to redo your section 2 if that's where we if that's the section that had the membership by town. So this is just saying that will be done. They're not going to vote on it yet because they're not a member.
Well, if I can throw something in here, Alan, if there's an amendment to bring in a new town, there has to be an amended section 2.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's not done later. It's done all at once. Yeah.
And so this paragraph doesn't say that. This paragraph needs to say that there will be a reallocation of membership in accordance with the principles of section 2 or something like that. And not focusing simply on the appropriate number of committee members from the new town.
We'll define the appropriate number of committee members. So at this point, I want to ask a question to Steve. Do you think we need the reference to the transition committee?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But the fact is, what we're saying here is the amendment is to bring in this town. At the same time, you go back to section 2 for the committee members. You don't put committee members in a bunch of different sections. Section 2 is where you form the committee, we define there and everything else. So that's why you need to do it that way. So
makes sense.
we need to do a little rewording on that. I don't think we need the transition committee the more we've talked about it.
Yeah, and you need to make a reference to all towns, not just committee members from the new towns.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about right now.
So maybe I suggest we take this one back and reword that, and then we can bring it forward the next time.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so that's been tabled.
Can you
Alright.
say members from all towns, all towns? Won't that cover it? Define the appropriate number of committee members from all towns.
The
Well, we
amended
could put
regional
this right at
agreement
the
will,
beginning. We could say that
you can just put a period after of committee members and get rid of all the rest of it.
Oh, you could do that.
Well, we had a pretty thorough discussion of on what basis the committee members would be allocated. And I'm not sure that we want to reopen that, do we? Don't we want to
No.
adhere to the principles that are already embedded in section 2?
Yes, and I liked your wording, Tupper, when you had
Yeah.
suggested that in accordance with the principles of section 2 to meet the, and whatever Matt said about the the requirement for representation. I mean, that to me would make sense to put in there as a reference to capture that.
Right.
Also, I would delete the word appropriate. I think they just want to fix the number.
No, it's going to depend on how many people are in the town. Because you have to use the particular, the methods, right, represent the one person, one vote type of idea. So you can't just set a number. That's the whole point.
Well, let me just put it this way, that there's no suggestion that if we don't say this, they'll do an inappropriate thing. I don't think appropriate adds anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you were saying. That is correct. I agree.
If I could give a suggestion, you could simply say is that if the new towns are accepted in that section 2 will define the membership or something of that type. It's just
We're pretty
section 2
close to that
define it.
right now. Due to the addition of a new town, the amended agreement will define the number of committee members consistent with the process outlined in section 2.
Yep.
How about process and principles?
Any other comments?
Well, I just went back and read the draft, but I don't know if this is the final version. I can't find my copy of that. 13 members, we're saying,
Yes.
Yes, well, that's what section 2 says now.
and so the draft that I pulled up says 13 members with 3 members from each member town and 1 member at large.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right
No,
one.
that's the
That's not
hard.
the right wording.
No.
No,
No.
I need to find section 2. I can't have any thoughts on this unless I'm looking at section 2 also, sorry.
So do you want to table this and come back to it? Or do you want to vote on this tonight? Section 10.
Well, can you just pull up section 2?
I can do that. So if we remember the changes that we've made here, right?
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing and try to find section 2. Got to go back to like a long time ago.
Top of your hand still up.
Well, I've got more to say.
Okay. I just
Okay,
didn't
there's
know.
one version on May 9th of 24.
I'm assuming you're putting all these in one folder as they get voted. And you just go to the folder and that's all our finals.
Got some kind of funny shapes to these documents here. Okay. 13 members. 2 from Berniston, 2 from Gill, 1 from Leiden, 5 from Montague, 2 Northfield, 1 from Warwick. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was based on what? On student population?
Town population.
Town population.
Basically, check section 2 that will have to be redrafted when you bring them in.
Well, do we know that Warwick's gonna be in here?
We wrote this, Jane, with the assumption that it would. And if it doesn't happen, it means the document has to be revised, but we decided to start with that assumption.
Okay. It's not showing on my screen.
That's
It
right here.
doesn't go down that far. I've got A, 1, 2,
Dorinda,
3,
you had a
4.
question?
Yeah, the new section was referencing the process from section 2, but if the process is that we've already predefined the numbers, I don't know what process it would reference. Or does it mean later, like how elections work?
Okay, so again, you've got the elections are really the key thing here in the sense that it's a district-wide election and with residency requirements. So when you do it that way, you can assign the number of representatives from each town, okay? And Steve, correct me if I have any of this wrong. So after lengthy discussion, these are the numbers we chose in section A1, okay? So it means that if there's a new town, then what's going to have to happen is that the district-wide residency requirement election process still holds. And there's going to have to be a negotiation about how many members come to join this group. And that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah,
Based a total of 13, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
but that can change
And it's
because,
all reconfigured,
yes, the number 13, it can all change, okay? You're
Right.
going to amend this agreement and you're going to amend this section when a new town comes in. So you could have 14, you could have 12, you could have whatever.
one of the things why you use this because a small town would get a full vote. If you went by population, you'd wind up with some towns that get half a vote or less of a vote. So
Right.
this allows them to have a vote, and you'll have to go through and take a look at how many from each town. That's why you take Montague, I think, has how many? 5?
Yeah,
Because-
we spent
I
4
mean, it's-
meetings on this.
It generally follows population, but it's not formulaic in that sense. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. And now I guess we're thinking about here if people have questions, or maybe that's an old hand up or not, I don't know. But are the changes in section 10 adequate? Do you want to vote on them, or what's your
Can you
next
read
step?
us the way you have D at the moment?
So you want me to call section 9 back up? 10, excuse me. Is
No,
that right?
just read it to us.
Okay, hang on.
And just for the record, Stephen, thank you, has joined us. I
Yes,
don't know
I'm
when you
sorry. I feel I had to get up.
No, that's okay. Do you recall what time you came in, Steve?
Yes, I came in about 6 minutes ago.
Okay, so let's say 7:15.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm late.
No,
That's
no
okay.
problem.
So section D now reads, due to the addition of a new town, the amended agreement will define the number of committee members consistent with the process and principles outlined in section 2.
Okay, so then so is that something that the transition committee should take up and make a recommendation?
If you're bringing in a new town, so the business of a transition committee is something that we want to deal with in a separate section.
Okay, so who does the work of reassigning the numbers of school committee members?
Whoever is putting forth this initiative. And it's going to have to be something that
It would most likely would be the school committee would be involved in working
Yeah,
that through and
I
taking
mean,
it
if a new
forward.
town speaks up, it's gonna be and presents an amendment, it's gonna, the school committee in that town are primarily gonna be the two parties involved. And it's probably also gonna involve legal assistance.
In other words, we
Well-
don't know.
No, that's the way it would work.
This is getting into some of the questions that I have in paragraph A of section 10. Are you finished with D?
Yeah, I don't have anything other comment about it.
All right, if I may, in paragraph A, I'm confused, really quite confused about how this works, because it begins by saying by an amendment to this agreement adopted under and in accordance with section 9 above. And then it sets forth some procedures about how to admit a new member. And they're different in some cases from the procedures in Article 9, Section 9. And I'm wondering whether we really do need to have a reference back to Section 9. I understand that this has to be an amendment, but it doesn't mean that we can't simply specify the amendment here. One of the things that confuses me is who drafts the proposed amendment for an additional member town. It's looking like it'd be a fairly complicated document. Does the proposing town present a finished amendment, or and follow the procedures here about presenting it and so forth, or is it done by the school committee? I heard you say a minute ago that it would be done jointly between the two, but it doesn't say that here. Perhaps more importantly, here it says that we need acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of the member towns. In section 9, the standard is a majority of the member towns for an
Which is
amendment.
the same thing.
It's the same thing today. Is that right? With 4. Is that what you're saying with?
Yeah.
With 4,
yeah.
a
If the number
majority.
of towns change, it's different.
Yeah. It seems like we shouldn't have a different standard written in there. And so I didn't track all of the differences, but it seems like there's quite a different procedure here than the procedure in section 9. And at least I think we ought to make sure that we understand the differences and make it clear so that there's no confusion. Because if someone starts saying, oh, well, it says we have to do it like section 9, and then somewhere else in section 10 is a different procedure, there could be some real confusion down the road. Yes.
So I want to again ask a question of from Steve here. So having been through this exact process as a superintendent, okay, the way that where a new town joins a region, okay, it happens, in that case, it happened through an amendment committee. So the new town has representatives on the amendment committee, and the existing region has representatives on the amendment committee, and they negotiate the amendment. And then it goes out for approvals. And my question is whether that needs to be referenced in the agreement. And I'm not sure that it does. I'm not sure that it doesn't. Do you have an opinion on that, Steve?
No, and it does not have to be, there's no law that says you have to form an amendment committee, but what happens is when you bring an amendment committee, you bring the parties together, they come to an agreement, then when it goes back to the towns, they're supporting the passage of that particular amendment.
Right, I know that part. My question is, does the amendment committee need to be referenced in the agreement?
You don't have to unless you want to. There's no law requiring it.
Okay.
However, it might make it easier for future people doing that if it's set out, if the procedure for doing it is set out in the document. Then they don't have to have umpteen meetings deciding how to do it.
Yeah, so right now I'm of the opinion that we table 10 and address any possible inconsistencies that Tupper may have raised, and that we possibly include a reference to an amendment committee and bring it back to you. Does that
Okay,
sound?
if you're looking at it, one small thing is that in A, it says acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of the member towns, each by majority vote. And we all know that we mean at town meeting, but I think it probably ought to say that, just so there's no suggestion that a member town could accept it by action of the select board.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's town meeting, right?
So I would say that at town meeting.
Okay, if anybody, I don't know, if people think that's reasonable, we can move on. Michelle?
Okay,
Yeah,
let's move on
So-
to them.
No, wait, I'm sorry. I don't think that's reasonable yet, because I thought Tupper raised an important part, and I think that it's a drafting error, and what he mentioned there, that clause, acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of member towns, each by majority vote, that looks like a comma splice to the prior clause, which makes sense on its own, which references section 9. Right, so it starts by amendment of the agreement adopted under and in accordance with section 9 as above, which is a process. Any town or towns may be admitted to the district upon adoption as therein provided, section 9, and upon acceptance at a special or annual town meeting by a majority vote by the town or towns, and it could just be town. Again, we don't need that multiplication. Town seeking admission of the agreement as so amendment. Done. That's an entire process. But then there's the comma splice, which adds a redundancy to what happens in section 9, acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of the member towns. So that's where the conflict is between that clause that's there, the comma splice, and section 9, and they describe different processes and are redundant and correct grammatically. So that, I think, is what we should seek to resolve now.
Well, if I could, Jay, looking at 9 and 10, you decide how many towns have to vote in favor of it. Do you want a 2/3, or do you want just a simple majority of towns? So if you have 5 towns, what are we gonna have, 6 towns, right? So in that particular case, majority still is 4. You gotta have 4 to say yes, and that's 2/3 is 4. Now, you got another town coming in, you take a percentage, usually it's a percentage, or you can say how many towns must vote. So you're concerned with a consistency between 9 and 10, and double looking at it, is that 10 said, a 9 says a majority of the towns, which happens to be, will be 4, and the 2/3 is 4. So again, definition, do you want a 2/3 in both, or do you want just to say majority in both?
No, I think Matt's right. I think there's some kind of a stutter in the drafting. If you simply take out the words beginning with acceptance and continuing through each by majority vote, then all the problems go away. Isn't that right, Matt?
Well, what it happens then, though, is we've decided that amendment is possible by simple majority. And so this is now, it's a policy preference. Do we want simple majority or 2/3 majority? And we have to get the consistency, choose one or the other. We haven't been presented with a consistent thing. So I don't have strong feelings about this.
Yeah, Matt,
Probably simple majority.
Matt, if I could point out, there's 2 different votes here. One is a 2/3 or majority vote by the member towns, but at town meeting, it's a majority vote. There's no 2/3. It's a majority vote at a town meeting. Now you determine how many towns have to agree to do an amendment or let somebody come in. There's 2 different votes that are taken there by the towns at their town meeting. So if you go by majority or even a 2/3, whichever, in your case, it's going to be 4 towns have to vote yes at their town meeting by a simple majority at their town meetings.
No, that conflicts with section
No,
9A3. When the majority
by
of member towns by majority vote at such annual special town meeting have approved the proposal for amendment, so that's it. All you need is a majority, simple majority of the number of towns. That's not what this next clause says, is it? Am I reading this wrong?
Wait a minute. When a majority of member towns by majority voted, such annual or special town meeting shall have approved it. So a majority of the towns. You have 6 towns. Majority is 4. Okay, one more than half was 4. So there's 4 towns would have to vote yes to have it done. By that. Now, in section 9, we said 2/3, and Jay pointed out, as he said, the number's 4 anyways. However, one of the things you got to look at is when you then begin with an additional town coming in, now you might be changing that. That's why you figure out where do you want to.
We're choosing between simple majority or 2/3 majority. The number is irrelevant. It's the principle and the process which are important.
So it's 6 towns, okay, 6 towns.
I can do the math, dude.
Yes.
can I interrupt? Dealing with Desi right now for PVRS's document. The most recent communication from them was that there were inconsistencies that needed to be corrected. And this is an inconsistency according to what they sent back. I'm not going to go into the whole deal with them, but they pointed out where we said things one way in one paragraph and another way in another paragraph. And this discussion fits exactly into their objection. We need to choose simple majority, or we need to choose 2/3, and we need to think about a district that has another number of members rather than just the 6, which makes everything come out the same here. Thank you.
I would like a simple majority for this process. What do other people think?
All right, so Matt, if I have this right, section 9 is a simple majority, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then section 10, you want to say the 2/3 change it to a simple majority.
No, what I really want to do is to strike everything after as so amended and before the and.
Are we on 9 or 10?
We're on 10. 10, subparagraph A, strike everything after as so amended and before the final and of that paragraph. That's what I really want. But I tried to kick the conversation off by saying, let's choose between a simple majority and a 2/3 majority to make it easy.
I agree with Matt. It's just
And
he's been going over this and I totally understand what you're saying, Matt. We should just do simple majority because if we move to 7 towns, right, 2/3 of 7 towns would be hard to calculate. So let's just keep it simple majority, both at the annual town meeting vote, or doesn't have to be annual, but town meeting vote, and the number of towns to approve it. Thank you.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, hang on a minute.
So right
Tupper,
after,
if you feel differently, I would love to hear your argument. I believe there's a good argument on the other side too.
No, I
May
think
I
it's
say
good.
may I say something? Please.
Yeah.
We are looking at 2 different processes in one overall process. In 9, we're asking the towns to, by a simple majority, either yay or nay, the acceptance of a new member. Section 10 is now requiring that 2/3 of those towns that voted have to be the baseline minimum for a new town joining the district. I think these are 2 different things that can be squarely enunciated clearly and it's up to the majority of this committee to decide, do we have, there's a difference between 2/3 of current membership towns and simple majority. Let's not look at the math. All math is going to be difficult. It's going to come out to fractions. What do we want? Do we
Simple
want
majority.
of what? Of the individual towns, then 2/3, or just the simple majority, cut and dry? I don't agree with that. I think there should be an overwhelming majority of existing towns that approve a new member, not a simple majority. I'm sorry. Let us have every town, yay or nay, individually at a special town meeting or town meeting to vote by simple majority. But when it comes to the aggregate town district, I believe it should be 2/3. Stakes are high. And I rather see 2/3 than a simple majority. There's a difference between a simple majority in the Senate vis-a-vis a super majority of 60 votes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand here, but we're all on the same page on this, and we do understand what you're saying, and that's what Matt's been saying. It's just that if we're trying to regionalize,
no, I disagree.
And we're trying. What I'm saying, if we believe in regionalization, and many people believe that this new district wouldn't even be large enough, I don't think we should put a higher threshold on trying to bring in a new member town. That's just my thought. It's not like it should be this contentious thing to bring in another member town.
I'm sorry, I don't believe it's contentious. I believe bringing in another town, yes, enlarges the district, but potentially can produce more problems. And I rather see a higher bar for acceptance by the total district than a simple majority. That's why in law we have differences between simple majority and 2/3. It is basically an implied security measure. And I believe when dealing with enlarging, that should be 2/3. That's just my opinion.
So one comment, get to Tupper in a second, that you may want to think about is that sometimes regional agreements have, this is sort of consistent with what Greg was saying, they have a standard for admission of a town, but they have a higher standard for withdrawal of a town, because withdrawal of a town is far more problematic than the admission of a new one. Admission of a new one is usually viewed as a positive development. But the withdrawal of a town is complicated and is generally not, I don't know, it's tricky. So sometimes that's where the higher standard is applied. But the other thing I wanted to make a comment about, just to make sure I understand that maybe we all understand, is that the first part of this, admitted to the district upon adoption and provided such amendment and a special town meeting by a majority vote by the town or towns seeking admission of the agreement so amended. So this first part is about the new town has to vote that they like this idea. And then it's acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of the existing towns, each by majority vote, compliance with law. Okay, so
that's what we just took out.
I understand the comment about 2/3 versus majority, but I just want to point out that part of this is about the new town voting, and the second part of it is about everybody else voting.
No. The first part is way up at the top. May be admitted to the district upon adoption as therein provided for such amendment. That's the first thing. That's all the towns under section 9 voting not all of them, a majority of the towns under section 9, voting for the amendment, which is the admission. And then it says, and upon acceptance by the town that's seeking admission. That's what's going on here.
Right,
And
there's
so
an amendment.
we took out the acceptance by the minimum 2/3 because that was redundant with the first part.
I
So-
disagree. I believe an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And you want to make the removal, the departure of a member town more difficult. That's like saying, oh, let's make marriage easy, but we'll make divorce even harder. You know, prevention, a little bit of safeguard. And that safeguard, I believe, should stand as 2/3.
Well, Stephen, one thought I had is that even given all of that, one of the peculiarities here is that we're talking about a majority or 2/3 vote, not of entities that are all the same, but of small towns and large towns. So it gets all mixed up in the fact that, you're going to have, depending on which towns are voting which way, could be some very unbalanced voting going on, either with majority or 2/3. My thought is the simple thing is majority, and that if you start going for something else, you don't know really where you are. I mean, you may find a situation.
Yes, you do. I disagree. Why are you
No,
so
you may
afraid of
find a
making the
situation-
bar so high?
You may find a situation where a very
Are
small
we so
town.
desperate that we need another town or 2 towns or 3 towns? Oh, small towns, yes. But are we so desperate that you're afraid to have a higher bar to let a new town in without any sort of voting security?
Yeah,
I'm
but what I'm
sorry.
saying
I
is
disagree. If we're
is
that
you may
desperate, just vote
Okay,
everyone
okay.
in. Don't have any
All right.
bar.
All right, let's decide how we're going forward here.
So
It's
Michelle,
7:00.
I have a suggestion, okay?
Okay.
So my suggestion is to table this and
Okay.
review in particular section A, okay? And bring that back to you. And there will still be reason for discussion and debate, but there are some things here that need to get cleaned up.
Okay,
So that's my one of the things that at the outset that kind of bothered me about this section is that it's sort of a passive voice thing that starts this section, and it shouldn't be. So I think a rewrite of this thing and using a better example and making it more clear, perhaps breaking it into steps will give people a better sense of what they want to discuss.
That's a good idea. A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
I
And,
move to take Jay's recommendation.
okay,
With,
all right. Let-
Second.
What,
With
All right.
trepidation.
Could-
With
could I-
trepidation.
Back, Jake, we'll come back with wording. Jay. should-
Michelle,
Yeah,
just, I'm wondering because the biggest issue right now is the supermajority and the 2/3. And I don't know how Jay is going to try to, working with the other two, kind of resolve that. I'm wondering if just some kind of a straw vote or something, just to give them some direction of what's the wish of the majority of this subcommittee, so they have an idea of how they might approach that. I think would be helpful. And it can just be a straw vote of, here's the way we want you to look at this. I agree, you got to take it apart, and breaking down the steps is a good idea. And after Matt's, where he had the amended, that if you started that as a new paragraph, that then makes it, distinguishes it from what's going to be next. But what's going to be next, I think you need a little direction, Jay, from us.
if you want to do a story vote, you can. The other thing is I can just include a note at the bottom that has I'm just going to make up an example. Let's say we write it up as majority vote. There could be a note at the bottom saying, this is what it looks like if it's 2/3 vote.
Right, but if you get a clear direction right now that majority vote is not the will, we're gonna save you some time. So, or
Yeah, go
vice
ahead if you
versa.
want. That's fine.
I'm just suggesting that, Michelle, so that they have a little bit of an idea of where we're going. So,
I'd be willing.
I think there's a motion on the table.
Well, I'd make a motion if there isn't to make it 2/3. To be honest, you know, 2/3 is a majority for the way it would exist if there were 6 towns. The math will get complicated if it expands out to 7 and 8, but that's fine. Ultimately, there'll have to be a decision made as to what that means. You know, I will, Stephen, I will say that a marriage is definitely a lot easier to go into than a divorce. So, not that I've
Yeah.
gone through divorce, but I know people that have, and
Yeah.
it's always much more complicated than getting married. You know, I do think that a 2/3 probably would not be much of an issue, considering most towns would see an addition of a new town as being
Yeah.
something positive. So,
yeah, I
um,
apologize, Jane. You did have a motion. I'll second
Yeah.
that just so we can move forward and just table it and have them bring it back.
Yeah.
Was already
All right.
seconded.
okay.
Yeah, it was seconded.
What-
All right,
what's the-
let's vote.
What's the
Well,
motion?
To have Jay,
It's to use a
Give
this
2/3
back
standard
to
for
Jay.
approval.
yeah,
No, the motion was to table this.
Right,
Right.
to give it back to Jay, yeah, to redo.
correct.
With which standard?
We didn't, there was
Neither.
no standard.
You were just gonna,
Yeah.
that's the motion was like, you're gonna go wordsmith it and come back and give us a
That's
chance to
right.
vote on the simpler 2/3.
Right.
I mean, this
All
whole
right.
discussion started because there's 2/3 here and 1/2 in 9.
All right,
That's
I'll
where
do
the
a roll call
discussion
vote.
started.
Okay, so we're gonna table.
Roll call vote
and
to
we'll bring it
table.
back.
Alan Genovese, yes. Matt,
Yes,
Michelle,
Yes,
Tupper,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Jessica,
Is muted.
Jess, did you say yes? You're muted.
I did.
Okay, and Dorinda
Yep.
and Greg.
An enthusiastic yes.
Okay, so there, it is officially tabled. Moving on. And
All right.
the time is 10:08. Go ahead.
Do we have time to do 11?
Well,
Let's see how it goes.
My recommendation is not to do 11.
Okay,
You want to use, so the two options I see it is we can adjourn or we can take a look at section 12, which is the issue with section 12 is how big you want this review committee. Okay. And if you want, I'll call it up for a minute. If we can come to some agreement, we might be able to approve it.
Mhm.
okay.
No, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
go for it.
Let's go to 12.
All right. All right.
So is this where you would change B to, instead of 4, you would say 6?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so, okay, so again, this is a common and recommended section for regional agreements. You put this document in place. It's a resource document and a defining document for your district, but you know, things change sometimes. So how often do you review it? And who does it? So what this just recognizes the possibility that it's healthy to review this. This draft says 5-year intervals and establishes an ad hoc group composed of knowledgeable agreements, people knowledgeable to study the agreement and determine whether or not changes might be helpful. It also gives the committee the option of considering but not doing anything about what the group comes up with. Okay, so it really still honors committee discretion about what they want to do. And then the second section is the one, and I've highlighted the word compose because this is kind of a giant group. And usually they're not. Okay, usually they're pretty small committees. I understand this is a district with, or could be a district with 6 towns, but you want to kind of keep this manageable and not make a giant sort of task. You don't want to make a constitutional amendment out of this. You just want a conscientious review and do something or not do something. So this has composed of 4 committee members. This is written for a district with 4 towns.
Right.
Okay, so just know that. So some of this has to change. Appointed by the committee, and then in this case, it would be 6 members of the committee, 1 from each town. It would be 6 members of the towns, 1 from each town, appointed by the select board. And it's a 1-year term to give them time to do their work. And the business manager and the superintendent can attend as ex officio. So if I have this right, this is 6, and it's 6 more.
For 12.
Do you want to leave it as 12 or do you want to shrink this thing?
That's a lot of people.
It is. And, you
How
know,
about 2 school committee members and 1 from each town?
that gets a little better. You know, it is hard to get people to serve on committees and stuff. So to be realistic about it, my recommendation is to somehow make this a smaller group. How you do it, it's up to you. You could start with Jane's suggestion of 2 committee members, and then you've got, what, 8 people.
I like that suggestion.
Yeah, I do too. Make it smaller.
And you have more representation from the towns, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know how you fix that. One thing that I'd say is I would say do it at 10-year intervals, and then people might be more itching to get on there and do something.
No, no, we needed 5, believe me.
Well,
After having it at Pioneer for what, 20, 30 years? 5 years is good.
So you guys do it every 5 years?
Well,
No,
if our
we-
new agreement is adopted, it'll be every 5 years.
Every 5, yeah.
You guys have had a new agreement every 5 years for how long?
We've had the same agreement since 1991.
Yeah.
With no amendments?
It has humongous need of change because
Right.
lots of places don't agree with the law. That's why 5 years makes sense. You can at least get it in conformity with however Mass General Law has seen fit to change things.
Right.
And just because you review it doesn't mean you'll have a change.
Yeah, it just I understand that. I think my expectation, like those are regular changes that under this proposed agreement could be easily made by the school committee itself by proposing an amendment at a majority and getting your agreement into the law. This to me is more of a review like, oh, is this format of agreement working? Do we like there being 13 people? Should there be 27? Do we like the way that the financial stuff, like the sort of deeper thing? And I feel like trying to take a real sampling of how a large organization like a 6-town region is operating every 5 years in an effective way based off volunteers would be unlikely. But if you did it every 10 years, it could be very meaningful. And that's the type of review that I want to make sure happens for this district. And I feel like if you're trying to do it every 5 years, you're never going to do a good job.
Well, I won't be here in 10 years, so I don't care what you do.
I was just thinking the same thing, Jane.
If I am,
I-
you have to have one gigantic birthday party for me.
There's something to be said for the 10-year suggestion.
Yeah,
Because it's a fair amount of work. It's hard to get people together. And if you do it, you want to do it right. I understand what Jane's saying about, you can have a document that all of a sudden needs a lot of changes. But you've got if this happens, you'll have a brand new agreement. And I think 10 years would work. I think 5 years is a little quick, honestly, in my view.
the other thing, it could say 10 years because you have in there shall at least at 5-year intervals. So this could be at 10-year intervals, but if you want to do it earlier, you could, if there's
Yes,
some
you could.
major thing happens. So you do have a loophole to do it earlier if some catastrophic thing happened and it required some major revisions. So 10 years works for me as long as it says at least.
Well,
Could be
and
earlier.
if you accept new schools, new towns into the district, you're going to be doing an amendment anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Hopefully
that's not a
going to happen
review.
more
That's an
frequently
amendment.
than
That's a
5 or
different
10 years.
process. So
Yeah.
am I hearing that we change this to 10-year?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right,
As long as it says at least.
and-
Yep.
now.
And then we've got the change of 2 school committee members and 1 person from each town. I think this is pretty reasonable.
Yeah. You want to have a vote on it?
I have a
Michelle?
comment if I may.
Mhm.
The, it says, beneficial light. The committee shall give any such ad hoc study groups report due consider, where am I? And report to the committee. And I think that the towns have equal interest. And I would say report to the committee and to the member towns. And to the select boards of the member towns. Because I think that everybody should understand that this is a partnership, these schools, and they're between the towns and the district, and so they ought to be treated equally.
I don't have a problem putting that in, Alan.
No, I think that's good. Right after reports, you could just insert it right there to the member, to the select boards of member towns.
And to the committee.
Yeah, and to the committee who will give due consideration.
Okay. I'm always spelling
the
committee
committee.
wrong.
I kind of have a
Government work.
problem with the fact that the study group can do all this work and then the school committee can just say, thanks, go away. We're not going to do anything with it.
If it's a
another reason for-
responsible committee, that isn't going to happen. And most of the people on this committee are not elected officials.
Right.
It's a process that works. I mean, we've seen it work. We're getting called back to help a district that's going through a review right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Does it need to say anything in there, Jay, regarding, if this ad hoc group may seek, a consultant or moderator if it's contentious, which I wouldn't, I never, say it
Yeah,
would
no,
be, but
usually what they do, Greg, is they work through the superintendent. And
Yeah.
in the case that Steve and I are involved in right now, the superintendent reaches out to a group like us if they need help.
Gotcha. Okay,
Doesn't
thanks.
need to be in the agreement.
Okay.
It's just a management kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm back again with another question.
Okay.
Considering what we've been going through, I think maybe they ought to be appointed for more than 1 year, maybe 2.
Good point.
That's
Yeah.
a heck of a review.
Well, they don't have to spend the 2 years. It's James' point. If they're still working on it, you don't want to have to get reappointed again. They may be done in 8 months.
Hopefully they would be.
Yeah. but
Do you
if
want to
they
change it
needed-
to 2 in case they need more time?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
The one thing you want to make sure they don't go into perpetuity. They keep going and going and going.
Right.
okay, I should be ready for almost a vote here.
Well, I would move that we approve, you have to scroll up. What is it? Article, section
12.
12
Well-
as amended.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Second,
You got a
Okay.
name to choose for your second?
Somebody,
Yeah.
I heard 2 seconds. Can you get that off the screen now, please, Jay? And I can do a roll. We all set to vote? Any other discussion? All right, Alan Genovese, yes. Matt,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Tupper,
Yes.
Jane,
yes,
Jorinda,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
and Greg.
Yes.
And we did leave, I know Kathy's still here. We did lose Deb Potay. If you have this recording, you'll know when she had to leave the meeting. So that passes unanimously. Michelle, you're up next. One of the things I just want to, we need to look at Wednesday not being a very good date, and we need to take a look at least maybe 2 dates that people can look on their calendars so that we can be far enough out to reserve it accordingly. I pass
Got
it back to you,
next.
Michelle. Yeah.
I
All
got the
right.
next last 2 Wednesdays.
You say that again, Matt?
I got the next last 2 Wednesdays in the calendar.
oh, I gotta get my phone. Gotta get my.
Yeah, I gotta go get mine too. I'll be right back.
It did seem like Wednesdays were okay, and this was sort of, there's a couple flukes because of budget season and vacations and stuff.
Is
Your
the next
budgets.
meeting, I don't have the agenda in front of me, 26, February 26, is that when the
Yeah.
next meeting is?
Per our prior scheduling, Are Dorinda, are you guys done with
Yeah, it was
your
26, so
major
if we don't
budget
change
stuff by
anything,
then?
No,
I didn't think so.
Wednesday,
No,
March
but-
25th. Jay,
I'm
is-
not counting me. I'm just saying Wednesdays was good for other people.
yeah, if we don't change anything, it's Wednesday, the 26th.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Wednesday, what?
If we
didn't hear
go
the
with the
date.
same idea about, I think
Yep.
it's 4th Wednesday, it's the 26th of February at 6:30, which is on the agenda.
Good for me.
I have a commitment, unfortunately. It's a business commitment, I'm afraid, I have to make, so.
All right.
Like,
So
sorry.
So Jay, we had said that, so that's, I'm seeing February 26th at 6:30, but we had said that after the holiday break, we would kind of reconnoiter and take a look at where we are in terms of the process and project out what we need. And if we needed to do 2 meetings, then we would do 2 meetings a month to make sure that we are getting all the things done. So we're now after the first of the year, so I want to bring that back again because I don't know if we meet just once in February and once in March, and once in May. I don't know if that's enough meetings for us to accomplish what we said. So it's time to revisit. Do we need to do a couple to get us back on track? Because we're not there yet.
I agree. We need to speed this up.
So section 10 and section 11 are probably going to take a little bit of time. Beyond that, section 12 is the last one of the agreement, so we approved that tonight. That leaves us with developing a section on the transition school committee. And then beyond that, it leaves us with developing language about liabilities and assets and how those things get transferred. What happens to pension obligations? And as we discussed earlier, Alan and Greg, the some legal help with those sections, with the liability and asset section, is going to be helpful. There's also going to be a need for special legislation. Okay.
So can we do
So-
February 12th as well and do 2 in February, 12th
It's
and
not perfect
26th?
for us.
Yeah, I can't do the 12th.
That's our special town meeting, so Matt and I will be at that.
Oh, the 13th is Thursday.
Dang, I could do the 12th. I'm the only one that could do the 12th. Sorry.
Actually, I can,
What about who said actually they could do the 12th? Oh, we're gonna lose Matt and Dorinda. That's not good. What about the 13th, that Thursday?
That's school committee meeting. For
Steve and I
Pioneer.
have a conflict on the 13th.
what about Tuesday?
Yeah,
I can do the
Tuesday,
11th.
the 11th. Yep, the 11th.
I can't, but you can do it. If everyone can, if everyone can, I would book it.
So can we try February 11th, get 2 in, and then maybe we're in a better position to figure out maybe just 1 in March, or maybe then we need to look at that
Yeah.
again.
Mac, are you here on the 11th?
It's a little bit of a problem, but I could be if I had to.
Because Steve can't be.
I'm away
Okay.
from the 10th to the 25th of February.
So Jay, can you and Mac be there on the 11th?
Well, we like to have 2 of us at the meeting, so it depends on Mac's
Yeah,
schedule.
I can be there.
Okay.
Uh,
How about members? Does that look like we can try that?
Yep, looks
Yeah,
good.
it's okay by me.
Yeah, looks okay to me.
Okay
All
for
right.
me as well.
Thank you. All right, so we'll do the February 11th and February 26th, and then let's see if we can nail down some of these things that we have been working on, and then get a couple others in. And just because you brought it up, I want to mention again. So there's a couple of outstanding things. I hope everyone got a copy of what was sent to the boards of the select boards to give them an update on where we are in the process. And in that, it mentioned we need to have a legal review. So we'll be looking to secure someone to do that. We'll also have to do another actuarial on the open obligations. We had a brief conversation with Blyer. What's her first name? God.
Joanne.
Joanne, thank you. With Joanne, and she pointed out that the towns or the districts have to have that done each year, and so both districts should have that information so that it doesn't look like we have to, hire someone to do a whole new study. We should have that information, and we could have maybe a conversation with Matt about putting together a document, on that. The other thing I heard was Pioneer has, something in the paper about they voted a new contract with teachers and paras, and now they have the highest paid salary in the area. I haven't researched that, but if that's the case, then we'll have to take a look at that aspect as well. Jane, do you know, is that a fact? Pioneer voted to give the largest raise?
Well, they voted a new contract for both teachers and paras.
All right, so it's something,
The whole staff, except the professional staff, except the, whatever you call them, administrative staff. The superintendent did make that statement that we now have the highest paid staff. She didn't say the county. I don't remember. it was a good geographic area that she was commenting about.
Okay,
I
thank you.
didn't research it. I didn't research it either, Alan, so I can't
Yeah.
answer that.
So I'm just putting this out to the DRAS committee just to give you a heads up that, you know, we'll have to have that, those things run concurrent to what Jay and his team is doing with getting us through the agreement. So it's a heads up. Jay, any comment?
Only that it might pay if you and Greg could meet with us at some point, maybe before or after the meeting on the 11th.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to anything else? Any other
Is there
business?
anything else? Yeah,
No.
okay. All right.
move
Motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. I'll second it.
All right. Alan Genovese, yes. Matt,
Yep.
Michelle,
Yes.
Tupper,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Jessica, Jessica
Was a yes.
was a yes. I don't know why I can't hear her. Dorinda
Yes.
and Greg.
Yes.
And thank you everyone for joining and participating. Much appreciated. We're
Thanks.
getting there.
Thanks, everyone.